bit of energy, and Danny promised 90 minutes. I promised to do it in 18 minutes. But before, with your permission, I would like to say big thanks. Thank you to Dr. Hilyadi for inviting me to this magnificent place. Let me tell you, it's amazing. Really, I woke up so early in the morning, went out to take some pictures. It reminds me the beautiful atmosphere of
Paradise.
No.
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter. Right, exactly. Unbelievable. But you know, I was much more amazed when I found that in 1859, Charles Darwin wrote his phenomenal, magnificent book on the origin of the species, Motza Haminim, in this institute, guys. Unbelievable. Now you understand why I'm so exciting. And now let's start. Okay, the Declaration of the United Nations of a national home for the Jewish people in the land of Israel in November 1947 caused great agitation among the Arab countries, and it was decided on a 3-day general trade strike as a sign of solidarity with their Palestinian Arab brothers. The Arabs of Aden also responded to this call. The strike began on Tuesday, December the 2nd, 1947, when the intention was to close all the shops for 3 days. And however, unlike their brothers in the other Arab countries, the Arabs of Aden decided to attack the Jews and express their full hatred toward them. They took revenge on them and the British imperialists for opening the gates of Palestine to the Zionists, which through the Balfour Declaration allowed the Zionist Jew to usurp the land of their Arab brothers, the Holy Land of Palestine. They disguised their militias, intend to destroy the Jews for fear that the British would tow them the plane, but to their surprise, the British did not come to the aid of the Jewish settlement in Aden, which was besieged for 3 days, but instead allowed the Arabs to do with the Jews as they wished, and many thousands of Arabs rioters ransacked and looted the homes and shops of the Jews, raped women, and burned schools and synagogues. I know that it's hard to hear it, but it's all based on a document which was written at that times, and I will explain it later. The British supposedly tried to stop the rioting Arabs when they sent the Arab military force called Aden Protectorate Levies, APL, under the command of the British soldiers. But these soldiers, acting against the besieged Jews, took part of the robbery and looting, and the majority of the Jewish casualties were from the fire of the APL soldiers, because they were the only ones who possessed firearms. The Jews fortified their houses against the rioter and were able to defend themselves with stones and empty bottles, but not against live fire fired from the weapons of the APL soldiers. It turned out that despite being British subjects, this did not help them in time of need, and the great British Empire abandoned them to their fate. On the eve of the riots, the Jewish population in Aden and Sheikh Huzman neighborhood numbered about 10,000 people, which constituted about 10% of the total Jewish population in Yemen. About 4,000 of them were Yemenite origin, British subjects born in Aden, and the remaining about 6,000 were temporary refugees from other parts of Yemen who came to Aden to look for work when the main goal was to immigrate to the land of Israel. Aden, in those days, served the only immigration gate for Yemenite Jews to the land of Israel, and their stay in the street of Aden involved much poverty and suffering. The mass immigration of Yemenite Jews to Aden in order to immigrate to the land of Israel hastened the establishment and the institutions in the land of Israel to place the Yemenite Jewish community on the agenda of the Jewish Agency, and these sent directors, doctors, educators to Aden to take care of the thousands of refugees. As part of the activities of the Jewish Agency, an abandoned British military camp was located in the harsh desert near Sheikh Huzman. In its place, a temporary immigrant camp was established that was supposed to receive about 1,000 Yemeni refugees who were roaming the streets. The camp was called the Redemption Camp, a name given it by the founder, Dr. Beigel, his full name, Dr. Naftali Ben Baruch. Due to the need for food and shelter, the pressure of the refugees to be included among the camp's residents grew. And indeed, on the eve of the riots in Aden, the camps numbered over 2,500 people. During the riots, the camp was a safe place for its inhabitants, and the Arabs of Aden had no interest in harming them because there was nothing to plunder there. The camp was also protected by hundreds of young Jews who were trained by Saadi Hatuka, the head of the guard, my uncle, Saadi Hatuka, my mom's brother. And the camp was surrounded from all sides to protect it from the possible Arab invasion. Did the British really do everything they could to stop the Arab rioters? Or did they just take action for the sake of appearance and let the rioters do whatever they wanted? Did the situation in Israel affect their policy in Aden? The answer is maybe yes. And now I'll try to prove it. During the 30 years of the British mandate in the land of Israel, many Jewish underground activities was executed by the British. Winston Churchill, the leader of the conservative opposition in those days, claimed in the British Parliament that Great Britain had about 100,000 soldiers in the small land of Israel, which was 3 or 4 times more than it had in the huge Indian subcontinent. And he said, what is the point of a miserable and pointless war against the Jews to give the land of Israel to the Arabs or to God or to who knows who to escape? This is the order of the day everywhere. And he continued and said, Egypt, India, and Burma are leaving us, but we must protect ourselves at all costs, lest we be ridiculed and slandered in the world because of the land of Israel. On January 31, 1947, Churchill demanded to hold a debate in the British Parliament, which was held 4 hours, in which he demanded to suppress the terrorists in Palestine with an iron hand. On May 4, 1947, prison in Akko, a port city in northwest of Israel, was broken into. 27 Etzel and Lehi prisoners and 180 Arab prisoners escaped. Of the liberators, 3 were killed and 5 were captured and brought to prison. Among them were Avshalom Haviv, Yaakov Weiss, and Meir Naker, who were caught and sentenced to death. On the other hand, the Etzel men captures 2 British sergeants, Clifford Martin and Marvin Pace, and threatened to execute them if the British carry out the sentence against the 3 friends. And so it was. The execution of the 2 British sergeants provoked a message of condemnation in the world and from the leader of the Jewish community in Israel as well. In London, this act was compared to the acts of the Nazis. Revenge action by British soldiers began in the street of Tel Aviv. Innocent civilians were beaten, shop windows were smashed, and 5 Jews were shot dead. Anti-Semitic riots broke out in Britain against the Jews, and the synagogue and Jewish cemeteries were vandalized. The prestige of the British government was damaged, which hastened their departure from the land of Israel. And these events, which were burned in the heart of the British soldiers in Aden, caused the Jews of Aden to be outraged when the British acted laxly and unleashed the Arab rioters. Nissim Awad Damti was my father's uncle, who was born in Aden. and he owned property in Sheikh Othman, and he was witness to the 3 days of riots. He and his family were saved from the inferno and barely were able to survive. He cleverly wrote a diary in which he described in the details, hour by hour, the course of events and took place during the days of the riots in the city of Aden between Sheikh Othman and Tawahi. As a native of Aden, he knew the entire Aden community by name and place of residence. He knew every house and every alley where the riots occurred. He detailed in his diary in a clear Rashi letters the name of the families that were attacked, the names of the victims that were murdered, the houses that were burned, the stores that were looted, as well as the schools and synagogues and other public buildings that belonged to the Jewish community that were damaged. In his diary, he documented exclusively the Arab strike and its result, and he made sure to recall the solid fact that he experienced and saw with his own eyes, so that they could not be refuted. On the first day of the riots, the Arab closed their shops, groups gathered in the Jewish neighborhood, throwing stones at the doors, mocking and insulting them. All the day, no physical damage was done. It wasn't until 7 o'clock in the evening that the signal for the real pogrom was given, when they started burning cars owned by the Jews. The Jews, on the other hand, threw empty bottles and stones at them. And a short time later, British soldiers and firemen arrived to put out the fire. But the angry mob dropped them away, and they left the scene, and the riots continued into the night. Only at midnight did the British soldiers arrive again, and after a few shots at the air, they fought the rioters. On the second day of the riots, in the early hours of the morning, some of the terrified Jews went out buy groceries. And they met their Arab neighbors, who encouraged them and assured them that the last night experience was a one-time episode and they have nothing to fear. This pretense lasted only about an hour. Then 200 Arab soldiers armed with weapons under the command of 12 British officers raided into the Jewish quarter and began throwing stones, breaking glass, and firing firearms at the Jewish homes. During that entire day, the diary entry described in details the act of killing and looting, rapes and robbery, and burning and destruction of the residents, shops, schools, and synagogues that behind the rioters. Dante also listed the names and addresses of all those killed that bloody day. On the third day, the fires, murders, and looting continue, and in the rioter details description, he mentioned the names of the murders and injured and the loss of property. A preliminary summary of the victim in the city of Aden alone showed 62 dead, and a known number of slaughters and burned, and a known numbers of girls and boys who were kidnapped by Arabs to convert them against their religion. 30 apartment buildings were burned, 5 synagogues and 2 magnificent schools were burned, a guest house and most of the Jewish shops and warehouses were burned and destroyed. Wealthy people lost everything they had. In great details and accuracy, Dante described the riots in Sheikh Othman as well as the riots in the port city of Tawahi, the residence of the High Commissioner. At the end of his diary, Dante lists 16 murders in Sheikh Othman by name, place, and birth and age, and one more dead person whose identity has not yet been made known. Despite all that was said and written, the Jewish of Aden continued to maintain loyalty to the Kingdom of Britain when the main culprit, in their view, were the Arab rioters. Most of the Jewish of Aden, by the way, emigrated to England, and a minority immigrated to the land of Israel. Even the writer of the diary, Nissim Damti, who was educated and wise man, did not place the blame on Great Britain. He even thanked her for saving the remaining of the Aden community. This diary, written by his own hand, is a historical document of unparalleled importance, shedding light on the Aden community in the days of the riots and pogroms. A magnificent and long-standing community was wiped out in 3 days. Thank you.